So here we go. Today, inspiring careers, and we have a gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing for probably 25 years, and he's always been very good to me. And I'm going to describe him as a pioneer of the Australia and Asia Pacific IT sector. Gari Johnson, welcome to Inspiring Careers.
John, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, no, I've been looking forward to having you on because you've always been good to me. You've always given me plenty of work. And I've really been grateful for everything you've done for me over the years. I'm going to hit you with a question which is completely unannounced to start with. When anybody ever talks about you in my company, if the name Gari Johnson ever comes up, everybody always has good things to say about you. Now, why is that?
It's because I know where all the bodies are buried. I don't know, John. Actually, it's look, I've always tried to treat people with respect,
yes,
with empathy. Try and treat them, where they are, not to try and make myself too much of a difficult or too much of a dick.
Yeah,
and generally try and work with people the best way we can. So I guess that's just the way it works.
Now, listen, you've had the most wonderful career over the last 25, 30 years. Has your career been important to you?
My career has been really important to me. It depends what you mean by career, but I dropped out of school at 16.
Okay.
And the story of that is that I got elected to the school council, and I had long hair, really long hair, and a beard, or a bit of a beard. And the principal called me to his office and said I wasn't allowed to become part of the school council unless I shaved my beard and cut my hair.
Yeah.
So I quit.
Yeah.
And I went out and tried to find some work to do. So that's how I sort of got into a career in the first place. I was a bit lost at 16.
Yeah.
And it was really just, it was looking around to see what I could do, and I found sales. And got stuck into sales, which I've loved ever since. It was kind of almost like a drug addiction. I fell into it and I've been hooked ever since.
Well, in fact, let me look at the camera. This is a great book. Gary's written it, A History of Enterprise Sales. I loved it because he mentions a lot of older type selling, which reminded me of growing up in Derry, because in Derry, we're the only place in the world where we've got a political name, because some people call it Londonderry after the London City of Guilds. For what it's worth, I'm not going to discuss politics today. However, I firmly sit in the Derry camp, so you'll see where I view the world. So, IBM, Salesforce, Oracle.
Yep.
Then, Alteryx, being a pioneer in AI. How has your career evolved? I'm interested when you say you left school at 15, because you're a very smart gentleman. You always struck me as being incredibly well educated.
Good actor.
So I'm going to, let me evolve that one first before we talk about your career. What has the process for you been like in terms of self-education? And this is interesting for anybody watching.
Yep.
We like kids to go to uni, but they don't have to go to uni. But have you made an effort over the years to continually self-educate?
Yeah. I mean, look, when I got into sales, you did have to teach yourself. You did have to learn by hard knocks, right?
Yes.
There wasn't schools. There weren't many managers or people like that had experience that could teach you about selling. I got into sales because I answered an ad when I was 16. And the ad said, it was in the Daily Telegraph newspaper, and it said, "Do you have long hair, a beard, and would you like to make a lot of money?" And my answer to that was yes, and fuck yes.
Yeah.
So I went to the ad, and it turns out what it was you would go around, knock on doors at night, selling artwork to people. So you had to look like an artist.
Yes.
And basically the idea was you would knock on a door and say you were a struggling artist and tell them stories about all these wonderful paintings that you were supposed to have painted. And hopefully if they liked the story, then they would buy one of your paintings. You'd make some cash.
Yes.
And I learned really, really quickly that I wasn't selling paintings. I was selling stories.
Yeah.
I was selling entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And that's really how my career started. But over the years, I had to keep teaching myself. I had to learn when I got into tech, what tech was about. I had to learn about selling as I became a sales leader. I led a team of 50 people when I was 19.
Yes.
And I had to learn really,
Sorry,
really
was
quickly.
That all door-to-door sales? Was that all commission only?
It was all commission only.
Yeah.
In fact, it was worse than commission only. You would finish at the end of the night. You'd go back to the office in the CBD. They would cash you up for whatever you sold, and you'd end up at the cross at night just basically having a drink and having some fun.
And blowing the money that you made that night,
and blowing the money. So you'd have to come back and earn some more money the next day, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, I had to teach myself all the way along through my career. Yes, in the later years when things got a bit more sophisticated and I got into enterprise sales, there were methodologies, there were certainly training programs, and there were people I could mirror myself on.
Yes.
So I could learn from others who were really good at the career. And I worked for some of the best sales leaders and with some of the best salespeople through my career over the time as well.
Well, we can look at that in terms of people that have influenced you, mentored you, etc.
Sure.
So how did you get your start in IT then?
I actually went to work for a company called Barson Computers. which was the distributor for Apricot, which was a British
I remember
computer brand.
Apricot. Yep.
So I was their New South Wales rep
Yes.
at the time, and that's how I got into tech. Yeah, great company, a great time. That's actually where I met my wife.
Oh, very good. Hi, and thankfully you guys are still together.
We are.
Talk about your kids, etc. How much was a PC then?
I can't remember, John. My
It
memory
would have
doesn't
been
go
$3
back
or
that
$4
far.
grand, wouldn't it? I mean, they were a lot more expensive then than they were now.
They were.
Yeah.
This was pre IBM compatibility when I first started.
Yeah.
But then I actually went from there. I mentioned I met my wife at Barson Computers. We started to see each other. We were going out.
Yes.
And the head of the company called me into his office one day and said, it sort of comes to my attention that you and the girl over there are having a bit of an affair. Well, it's not an affair. We're just seeing each other.
Yes.
And he said, well, we've got a policy that, you can't have two people in the same part of the organization that are together. I said, okay, no problem. I'll quit. So I left Barson Computers. And I went out to a company, was one of my resellers at the time, a company called Archive.
Okay.
They had a retail store in North Sydney.
Yeah.
And I ended up buying the company.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And ran it as my own organization for a couple of years.
So you've had your fingers in a few pies. We first met when it was at VMark, then it became Essential, didn't it? And then it was bought by IBM.
Bought by IBM, correct.
Curious question for you, and then we could talk about different elements in your career. IBM.
Yep.
Salesforce. Oracle.
Yep.
Difference in cultures?
Totally different.
Yeah.
All had their strengths.
Yeah.
All had the challenges. Oracle was a pretty tough environment.
Yeah.
IBM was a big, sophisticated environment. But been around for a long time, and there's certain processes in that organization that makes them successful.
Yeah.
Salesforce, really innovative company. I learned a lot at Salesforce. I'd say that's probably one of the best parts of my career is in enterprise tech.
Yes.
In that organization because of the culture and because of the people I worked with.
Yeah. Yep. Talk to me about mentors. Give me a couple of lads. You can do a bit of name dropping if you want. Anybody, and funny enough, we're still friends. Murray Reid was a wonderful lad that you worked with for years. Very genteel man. Anybody in particular stand out? Hey?
Oh, look, lots. I don't know if I would have mentioned specific names, only because there were so many.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the big names in the industry that I worked with or worked for. I mean, a lot of them are running some of the biggest companies in the world right now.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from them. But I'll be honest with you, I also learned a lot from the people that reported to me, the people that I managed.
Yeah.
Understanding how to be a better leader for them and understanding what it meant to help make them successful taught me to be a better person.
Yeah. Do you feel, therefore, that you're more comfortable in your own skin now than you were 30 years ago?
100%.
Why is that?
30 years ago, I thought I had to prove everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? 30 years ago, I thought I had to be the hero. I had to do everything. 30 years ago, I felt like if I wasn't the one that was proving that I was succeeding every single day, that somebody would find me out and fire me. These days, I'm much more comfortable with who I am as a complete person. I think actually COVID did that for us. I noticed when we were going through COVID, the fact that we were all locked away, we couldn't meet people face to face, we changed the way we operated. How many people was doing Zoom calls where they were wearing a shirt and tie, but they were wearing shorts underneath, right?
Yes.
We just seemed to let the barriers go down that we were used to dealing with in sort of enterprise upmarket tech. And I think it taught a lot of us just to be more true, more real.
Yeah.
We all saw executives that were having Zoom meetings and their kids come into the room and interrupt them, and it was okay.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the start of it. But then since then, I've been deliberate in trying to, basically take my true self, bring my whole self to whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's my career or my personal life.
Now, we will revisit that when we get to talking about the various books, etc., because there was a couple of key points there that I noticed. Any dark periods in your career?
Oh, yeah. I told you about the company Archive that I ended up buying. We ended up going broke.
Did you? Yeah.
We did.
Did you have your personal money, your house and all that on the line? Yeah.
No house at that stage, but it was all my money and all me. And all that was, we were a retail shop in North Sydney and we sold PCs, software. And we actually were one of Microsoft's early distributors for New South Wales and some of the other parts of Australia. But we just couldn't compete because not long after I bought it, the likes of the Harvey Normans and those sorts of companies, they started to get involved in tech. And we just couldn't compete with their margins, right? So it wasn't a huge business. We did about $1.5 million turnover, had about 9 employees. And at the end of I think we lasted nearly 2 years. And we then had just to shut it down.
What did you learn from that, Ty?
Working hard is good, but it doesn't solve everything.
Yeah.
You need to work smart.
Yeah.
And you need to take chances. You need to be willing to take risks. But you also need to be smart about it. I obviously was in an environment where I had no hope of competing. There was just no way a small business like that could compete with a large chain. But it also led me to be resilient. That's where I started to learn the the need to be resilient. And it's something I've focused on through most of my career since then.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, did it impact on your health or anything? Do you feel more relaxed now? We're a little bit intense when we're younger, aren't we? Yeah.
Always, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it was a stressful time. We ended up moving to Queensland just to get a fresh start.
Yeah. Yeah.
The woman who then became my wife. We
Yes.
moved to Queensland, had our first child, and I was there for 3 or 4 years, basically in a tech business, a company called Sanyo Office Machines, and ran their Queensland business. And it was a great, or a fresh restart, I suppose. Allowed us to stand on our own 2 feet and figure out how to do things the right way together.
Yeah.
Until we came back to Sydney, and that's around about the time I met you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I look at Sanyo and I look at Canon and perhaps Fujifilm, they've always struck me as organizations that did they give you good sales training? Did they have good sales hygiene at that stage, or more so the American rather than the Japanese companies? Say,
yeah, it was more so the American companies. It wasn't that they were a bad company or didn't have sales training, but they were very much a distributor-led business.
Yeah.
So it was really about having a network of customers that you were just seeing all of the time, making sure that they were getting the products, that those customers wanted.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this question because I'm a bit of a Luddite and I was excited about talking to you because I see you as one of the great leaders in the AI world for our audience of all different ages. Let me ask you this question. What's the most positive thing that's happened in the world with AI? And then what's the most negative?
Look, there's a lot of positives, I think. I'm not somebody who is blindly of the view that AI is the best thing in the world. But I think there are a lot of positives. It is helping us understand how to do things at scale that we couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Even in our industry, in selling or in tech, the way that you can operate today and the things that you can get done is significantly more scaled up. It's significantly faster than you could do it without AI. So there's a lot of good that's coming from that. It's forcing people to think a lot more about the processes that they do on a day-to-day basis in their business or even in life. It's forcing people to think, is this the most effective way to do what it is I'm trying to do? Because often it isn't. Often it's just a process that we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 or 30 years.
Yes.
And we're just repeating the same stuff because we think it's what works.
Yes. Yeah.
So AI is giving us an opportunity to sort of rethink that. That's a positive. The negative, it is definitely having an impact on people. It's definitely having an impact on jobs. And careers for people. There are people losing jobs. There are people who there are roles that won't be around in 5 years' time. It's certainly the quantity of role, but even some of the types of roles, because AI will be doing some of those things. But I think if I can flip it back, the other thing that I think is good about that is forcing people like me to pivot, to think about other things I can do. What other skills do I have? What other things, can I be doing with my life that are challenging and interesting to me, but things I wouldn't have thought of if
that's excellent. Hey, let me ask you this, and I will go back to that because there was a couple of notes I made in your books. Am I naive thinking that the world has evolved over the last X 1,000 years and we've got Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, etc., and then the world continually reinvents itself from an economic perspective? Do you not see new types of jobs being generated?
Definitely.
Like my young lad's a gamer. There was no gamers 30 years ago, right? So is there still an opportunity for young people to build careers in areas that perhaps we hadn't thought of? Hey?
Absolutely. I overall, I'm positive on what AI is going to do for society with a couple of caveats, which I'll come back to. I think 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, society will be a better place largely and partly because of AI. I think the things that it will help us change about society will be positive. But in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be people who will struggle. There will be people our age, John, who will probably struggle to find work partly because of AI. There will be younger people who will struggle to find work. We're seeing the stats now coming out of the US.
Yes.
University graduates that are struggling to find work because entry-level positions are being done by AI. So I think there's a disruption that's going to happen for the next, let's say, 10 or so years, which some people are not going to actually be able to work their way through very easily. But I think once we get through that, the younger people that are coming into the industry will get the benefit of AI. They will be able to accelerate their careers and do things better. And I think overall society will be good, as long as we don't leave the development of AI purely in the hands of half a dozen billionaires whose vested interest is in selling more of their AI, not what it's good for or not how it's good for society.
Well, one thing I would say there, and I am going to get you to talk about one point in your book, but I mean, it's almost like there's a big scare campaign with all these influencers on YouTube where they get on these podcasts and they talk about the fucking world's about to end because of AI. It's not quite at that stage.
It's not. No? It's not. I mean, I think, as I said, I think it becomes very localized to certain groups of people who are going to struggle. But I think overall, our society will be a stronger and more effective society, 20, 30 years from now because of it.
Now, you do talk about something called the intelligence gap in the book that I've read, and I'm going to read your other book, and I'm going to give that a plug as well. Give everybody a rundown on your theory on the intelligence gap, and then most importantly, how can they learn to overcome that?
The idea of the intelligence gap came out of some conversations I was having with people about AI. AI, artificial intelligence. It is artificial. It is not intelligent. It's just really, really, really well trained on large amounts of data. And if you think about it, what it means is AI, effectively, generative AI that we talk about today, large language models, they're basically algorithms that are very, very good at predicting based on the information they've been fed. They can read the patterns. They can understand the next logical decision or the next logical point, and they can predict that. Now, if you think about that, that means if you've got a large language model with a whole heap of information that's been collected over the last 50 years, it's also got the biases, it's also got the problems, the failings, the mistakes that we as a society have made as part of its learning, right? So the problem you've got is with AI is that it is dumb in the sense that it doesn't understand the context that you're trying to operate in. So AI, for example, can look at my sales data in my CRM, and it can decide that, over the last 5,000 transactions, these are the trends that make sales go up and down. It has no clue that the guy I'm trying to sell to today, who's a CFO, hates the CIO and won't sign off on any deal that guy wants to do. It doesn't have the context. And that's the bit that I talk about being the intelligence gap.
Brilliant.
Super smart, but no context.
So what advice can we give, not just our young people, but everybody in the world? What can people do from a skills perspective to develop themselves further to be able to work across that?
A couple of things. Focus on context.
Yeah.
The good thing about AI is it scales up processes. It scales up things that we don't know how to do or can't do quickly enough. And it allows us to be more effective at scale. It is not human. It doesn't care that the sale gets won or lost. It just can predict the likelihood of the sale getting won or lost. So as individuals, it's in our own best interest to work on the things that make us more human. Empathy, having context. As a salesperson, being able to go into a room or into an environment with a customer and throw away the rule book because this one's outside the way things normally operate.
Yes.
You've got the context of the way that the organization operates or the people that you're dealing with. And as a good salesperson, you can throw the rule book out and just operate in real time with where they are. AI can't do that.
Yeah. You've given me 50 questions straight away. Let me address something in terms of selling to enterprise, just for my own curiosity. You ran Alteryx around the region, once again, a very high-profile AI company. Are we selling ROI? What are we selling here? How much tangibility can you give these people? You're avoiding the question now.
No,
I'm just curious as to whether you can give an ROI tangible solution when you're selling an AI type solution.
I was trying to think of a clever answer, but I can't. I don't think what many of us are yet focused on the outcomes and the ROI on AI. We're too busy trying to figure out what it can do and what it can't do. We're too busy trying to figure out how we fit in with it and how it fits in with what we do, so that we're not really focused on the business outcomes. We'll get there, because you can't be successful in business, whether it's enterprise or small or medium business, unless you're focused on solving a problem for somebody.
So does that mean that there's a lot of noise about it? Let me go back to something that you and I have looked at, which is the AICD company directors course. All directors are getting told you need to be across AI, etc.
Yep.
Are sales professionals therefore being a little bit opportunistic where they're selling AI because it's almost like the business feels that they need to be across it, where the business hasn't really got a proper business case perhaps to use?
When have you ever known a salesperson to be opportunistic?
Oh, no, but you see, well, what I love about your book is that, even though you go right through the history of selling, etc., you keep coming back to the basic theme that people buy from people, and people like integrity and decency. That's what you and I have dined out in, hopefully, for the last 30 years. But let's hope that's the same across AI. Let's talk about your leadership career. What type of leader are you?
I think you'd have to ask some of the people I've led, but I'd like to think consultative. I'd like to think that I'm somebody who's more of an orchestrator rather than a leader. I said it earlier. Early in my career, I thought I had to be the hero.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake that most early sales leaders do, which is you figure you've got to be the shining light that shows everybody the way. And you find yourself jumping in on sales calls to add some value, or you find yourself, working your way into a deal cycle because you think you can help. And your team learns nothing other than just to rely on you.
I was going to ask you about that, because obviously you've always struck me as a gentleman. You've got a great intellect to start with. You've got good empathy. You always struck me as a guy who was what I would describe as a flair salesman, where you'd be quite lateral, quite creative. As a sales leader, therefore, have you learned to be patient, whereby you would turn up almost like an executive sponsor and support a sales professional.
Yeah, what I learned a little while ago,
Yeah.
but probably not as early as I should have, was it was about actually trying to figure out how to help that person become successful by guiding them, letting them find their way forward, not showing them every single step that they then don't learn. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look at some of the people I've worked with over my career, and some of the people that I've coached as an individual contributor, and some of them are in some amazing companies doing some incredible things, leading teams of their own.
Yes.
And that's probably the biggest tick I get out of the career these days, is being able to see people do that and develop.
Now, this is very important because I will ask you about what you look for in employees. But do you do a bit of mentoring these days?
Yeah, a little bit. I most of my time I'm spent actually working with startup and growth companies at the organizational level, rather than the one-on-one coaching. But there are a few people in my network who reach out from time to time, and I'm always happy to make time available and share with them what I can.
So therefore, when you're recruiting, what do you look for in a potential employee?
It's changed. Early in my career, I looked for the sales demon, the person that was the really strong seller.
Was that without being arrogant, somebody in your own image, if you like, in terms of?
No, not really.
No, okay.
Well, I'd like to think no, but no, it was really you looked for the gun salesperson.
Yes.
These days, it's less about that, and it's more about looking for somebody. In fact, probably the number one characteristic I look for is somebody who knows how to unlearn what they know, because the world is changing so much. The things that we are doing today we weren't doing 3, 4, 5 years ago. And you find that there are people in every industry, it's not just in tech sales, that were good at their job and have been for 10, 20 years, who've got one single way of doing something, or maybe two, and they won't give that up. But when the world changes and when the way you have to operate changes, they struggle. So I look for people who have that ability to be coached. I look for people who have that ability to throw away the stuff that got them to where they are today, but maybe won't get them to the next level.
Yes.
They're prepared to give it up and be a little vulnerable, and basically go out there and try something new.
Now, that's interesting then. So my question would be, do you think the client purchasing decision process has changed greatly in the last 20 years?
100%.
Okay.
20 years ago, as a salesperson or as a sales leader, you were expected to be the font of all knowledge, and you would go and explain to your customer what it was they needed to do and how they needed to do it and why they needed your product. And if you told them a good enough story, they bought the painting, they bought the tech, right? They bought the thing that you sold them. That doesn't happen today. Our customers have always been smart, but they're also more knowledgeable now. They have their own AI that knows how to go out and do the research on you and all of your competitors. They understand probably a lot more about you than you realize before you even step foot in the door. And they have buying processes these days that have been developed over 10, 20 years that actually help them get the value out of what it is they're trying to deploy, rather than expect you to make that decision for them.
Yeah, that's interesting in terms of where you're up to. Let's talk about our wonderful younger generation.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me about your family. You told me your young daughter works on a famous TV show, doesn't she?
My daughter Madison, she'll hate me for saying this. She's a talent manager on The Voice. Has been for the last few years, which she loves. High stress environment, high energy environment. You think in tech we have a tough time? I mean, we do, but I've got to tell you, that industry, from the stories I've heard from her, is a really, really tough industry.
Is that because they're dealing with sort of these quasi personalities or reality TV types or something? Yeah.
Look, that comes into it. It's just a really high energy, high. It's a tough environment.
Yeah.
I mean, she'll work 14, 15-hour days when they do shoots. She'll get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get home by 4 in the morning if you're lucky. Sometimes it's just a lot of stuff on, and it's very, very fluid. It's very, very dynamic industry. Things change all the time.
Yeah.
But she loves it. She's successful at it, which is great. Last thing she wanted to do was get into tech sales after she saw the way my career was.
Do you reckon you've aged prematurely? I think you look great for your age, to be fair to you, as we both do, hopefully.
There are days I think I probably died prematurely.
Yeah.
And then I've got a son, Chris. He's in sales. He's getting into sales in electrical wholesaling. He actually started off as a chef.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
But in COVID, that was a very tough business to run.
Yes.
Again, another high stress, tough environment. It's interesting. Both my kids are in really high stress, very tough environments. When they said they didn't want to do that in tech sales because they thought that's what they saw in my career.
Yes. Yep. Your career, you're still learning. I want you to tell everybody what you're going to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years. What do you do for your own personal learning now? How do you keep up to date? both in terms of the soft skills, funny enough, that we've talked about, but also the technology trends. What do you do now to stay sharp?
You mentioned I'm writing. I've actually written and published now 8 books, some on the tech industry, but some on AI and technology in general. Writing those books forces you to learn. You need to go out and do the research. So I'm reading a lot. I usually awake by 4 a.m. most mornings. I would spend the first couple of hours of my day actually reading a lot of the feeds, a lot of the stuff that I subscribe to, learning new concepts, new ideas around whether it's tech or AI or even just being human.
Yes, yeah.
So I do a lot of that. Talking to people like this, it's really great to get a different perspective on things from different people and learn different things that way as well.
Yeah, yeah. What about the actual employment side? You did tell me you've got a couple of fractional opportunities that you're doing as well. Hey? Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I got out of the enterprise gig, and I was looking around to decide what I wanted to do, and that's when I started writing, to be honest. So I took a little bit of time out to write. I publish a Substack newsletter weekly as well, and I do some other things as well. I got back to playing guitar a little bit more often. I used to play that when I was younger, and getting better with that, and just kind of, getting into who I was.
Yes.
And then after a few conversations with some colleagues who were starting up businesses or who were in early stage companies, I realized there was obviously some experiences I've had which could help them understand how to do things a bit better.
Yeah.
So I've started doing a few short-term contracts with companies where I can help them understand a more effective way to put their go-to-market organization together, how to run that, some of the experiences I've learned from my career, and just help them understand how to be more effective.
Well, I mean, there's plenty there for you to do, because I was suggesting to you, I mean, laugh at me because I love my YouTube these days, but have you not thought about doing some coaching and guiding in terms of your own mentoring or YouTube channel? Any ideas there? Right?
I'm toying with a podcast, but I'm still trying to work out exactly what it would be. It feels to me like it should be about my experiences, but also other people's experiences in their careers over time. Yeah. Maybe uncovering, some of the things that people learnt as they went through their careers or are going through their careers if they're still early in their career. My career's been brilliant. I've loved it. And I think I've said this to you before. I'm never retiring. Yeah. I'm going to be doing some form of this for the rest of my life. But obviously there are some learnings I've got that I could probably pass on, and really just sort of share ideas around what it means to be the best you that you can be. So I'm toying with that. We'll see whether that podcast comes up.
So therefore, and I'm going to ask you about music in a second, because we both like our music, and I know you're more talented than me on that front. Young people, are you more excited for them now than you would have been 30 years ago?
I don't think.
What advice have you got for them?
I don't think I was thinking about them 30 years ago, to be blunt.
Well, you were young.
Yeah, I was thinking about me, to be honest, for sure. Yeah. And most people at that age were. I do think about them now. I mean, I've got a granddaughter. She's about 15 months old. So I think about the world that she's going to, grow up into. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I'm interested in AI and the way the world is developing. I'm thinking and writing more about not just the tech, but the impact of tech on us and the impact of tech on society. The book I'm about to publish is called The Hero Pivot. Is about that. It's some stories from my career, but also really about the pivots and the things that I learnt from those stories, and then compares that to some of the other things that have happened in the industry over the last few years, and what I think it means to be a strong leader these days in terms of being able to understand how to pivot. But to answer your question, with the young folk, I mean, they're the people that are going to run this world in 10 and 20 and 30 years. Yeah. The world is really hard on them. If we look at the last 2 generations, people that are in their 30s these days and younger, they've struggled in a lot of ways with the way society is and figuring out how to make their place in the world, right? So understanding how to help them on that journey, understanding how to help make a society that's going to allow them to be the best that they can be, I think that's an important gig. Yeah, no, I want you to tell us more about your books, because I'm very interested in all the work. Give me a flavour for 3 or 4 of the books, and then where can people access them? And Tyrone will put the links at the bottom of the podcast so that people can access them online or whatever. Yeah, they're all available on Amazon, Apple, in a bunch of online retailers, Barnes & Noble, those sorts of places. So they're all fully published. They basically fall into 2 categories. I wrote a trilogy called the Algorithmic Mind series. And that's a series of 3 books that talk about AI and the impact of AI on us today and over the years. AI is not new. It's been around in form, since the 60s, machine learning and things like that. Well, you are talking to a gentleman that went to Bletchley Park last year with his son, because I love the Enigma. I love my European history, but that was it Alan Turing and the gentleman? Turing, sorry, yeah. Machine learning, as it was called then, correct. Yeah. No, as I said, I'm definitely excited for society overall. I'm excited for the potential that the younger people have ahead of them if we can get it right. And a big part of it is our generation and the generations after us helping to make sure that things are right.
Yes.
You and I have talked about things like Alan Turing and machine learning being around for quite some time, right? It's not new, this technology.
Let me ask you this question, and this is an interesting one for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that the IT industry is in better nick now than it was 25 years ago for people to work in it?
I think it's different for sure. I was almost going to say that when I first got into it, it was a bit of a cowboy land. It kind of was. It wasn't always. There were certainly professionals and there were professional organizations back then.
Yes.
And I referenced that in the book that you read. But it has certainly evolved. I think what we find now is, when I first got into sales, like I said earlier, it was about being the hero. It was this lone salesperson that went out there and against all odds got the sale done. That's not the way it operates, certainly in enterprise tech these days. It's teams of people with different skills, different abilities. The salesperson tends to orchestrate.
Yes.
Or the sales leader would orchestrate to help get the customer the outcome that the customer's trying to get. And whereas it used to be, like I said earlier, about the organization trying to sell stuff to their customer, more and more these days it's about trying to work with the customer to understand the problem and how you can best help them solve it.
Yeah, yeah. What worries me, and I'll be very honest with you, do you believe, because you've had very senior roles leading sales teams, do you think the organizations put people under more pressure now to deliver results than they did 15, 20 years ago?
I think it's always been the same.
Is it okay?
I think it's always been the same.
Even at IBM?
There's differences for sure, but it's always been the same. If you're a public company, the scrutiny on the organization and therefore the people in the organization is intense. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way. Which is why you see a lot of the very large new tech companies not actually going public yet, unless they really need to, right? Because when you're private, you have a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more opportunity to run the business the way you want without the eyes of Wall Street on you all the time, right? But I think overall, it's the same. It's bigger. There are more of us doing it. There are faster processes happening today. And with things like AI, we're able to do things faster. So people are expecting quicker results. And there's
quicker growth, possibly. If you look at your career with Alteryx and Salesforce and Zendesk, etc., they're probably looking for more instantaneous growth across the Asia Pacific region. Yeah,
there's a degree of that. There's always been a degree of it's worked in the US, it's worked in Europe. We understand how the playbook works. Just go and execute it in APAC, and that doesn't work.
Yes,
because you've got different cultures, you've got different all sorts of things in different countries. The Challenger method is a great method for enterprise selling in the US and in Europe, and in Australia it'll work. Try doing that in Japan and see how well it works.
Well, I was going to ask you that because we will talk about your music and I want you to tell everybody what you do for you to relax, but you're a big travel man.
I used to be.
What countries have always intrigued you that you've really enjoyed going to with your wife, for example?
I always loved Japan. It's one of my favorites. India is another one. My wife and I did a trip there a couple of years ago. She loved it. She'd never been. It's an incredible country. So much diversity. People think of India as one country, with 1.8 billion Indians that live in it. It's actually 14 different countries.
Yes. With
different cultural contexts, different languages, and north of India is completely different to the south of India, but it's an incredible experience.
Yes.
I can't, we love Italy. We love Europe as a whole. But I can't say there's a country I didn't like or don't like.
Well, that was one of the great things about the job, especially now when we're looking at what you and I are doing with our coaching young people with their careers channels, etc. The evolution of these countries like Vietnam, Thailand, etc., it just gives everybody, all the young people, a chance to develop. Hopefully white collar as opposed to blue collar careers, and that's not in any way condescending to anybody. Jesus, I grew up in a world where people had blue collar jobs if they were lucky enough to have jobs.
Sure.
Now let's talk about you. Music. What else do you do for relax? Or to relax, I should say.
I listen to music a lot. I've always loved music. Music's always been a big part of my life.
Are you a guitarist then?
I do play, yeah.
Yeah.
I won't be getting any recording contracts anytime soon. But,
are you a lead guitarist or a rhythm guitarist without getting technical?
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends who else is playing with me.
Yes.
Probably more of a rhythm guitarist.
Yeah.
Actually, my first involvement in music, I was a singer in a band when I was 15.
You are talking to a guy who was the lead shouter in a couple of good bands, funny enough, my brother and some of the lads in Derry and Edinburgh, etc.
Yeah.
Favourite band?
No, I don't have one. I have lots of favourite bands.
Okay, favourite 5 bands?
Well, if we go old school, then Aerosmith. I go back to Black Sabbath. I think they're one of the really early bands. Great Zeppelin, of course, in the early times. These days, Foo Fighters.
Yes.
There's a lot of great music out there, and I'm finding my music is broadening. I used to be, very much into guitar-oriented contemporary music, but now I'm open to anything that's good.
It's
Love a bit of good.
quite funny, actually, when I had Sandy and Tyrone up a couple of weeks ago and I put some of my music on, and Sandy said to me, is that an original song? Because such and such a rapper's done that. Obviously, there must be all these songs that we listened to
exactly.
in the 70s, 80s and 90s that the rappers do. Let me ask you this. Going forward, what do you want to stand for over the next 3 to 5 years? What do you want to do both for yourself and for other people?
Yeah, I think I think definitely from a sharing what I know point of view, then the fractional work I'm doing with organizations, helping them understand, the tweaks they can make to the way they're operating that gives them that extra bit of juice in their go-to-market business. It would be great to be able to continue doing that for particularly Aussie companies. Some either whether they're startup or growth type companies. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
As an individual, as I said earlier, I've got a granddaughter. I want to help her grow up to be an incredible young woman. And for me, that means, my wife and I have talked about it. It means, teaching her the good things about life, not just how to learn and be great and have a great career, which obviously we want for our children and everybody, but just even simple things. We love to cook.
Yes.
Right. So being able to teach my granddaughter the importance of being able to cook, eat well, live a good life, take the time out to do that rather than get caught up in the pressure and all that kind of stuff. That's something I'm keen to make sure that I can pass on.
And from reading, and once again, I'm going to give this book a plug. Great book, History of Enterprise Sales. You wouldn't change anything. You've always been a guy that has always been very upbeat about life and your career, etc. Would you have got into sales again when you were 16?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I love it.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I love how it's evolved and I love what I'm doing now, but in broadest terms, if you ask me what I am, I'm a salesperson.
Yes.
And I love it. I would get into it again. Would I do some things differently? Yes. Would I change the things No. Because that's taught me to be who I am. It's given me the skills and the perspectives I have today. So no, I don't think if I could go back in a time machine and just change that thing, I don't think I'd bother.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've always got on great, and I've loved having you on the show.
You too, John. It's been a pleasure. Brilliant. Loved it.
There you go. Gari Johnson, one of the great pioneers of the Australian and APAC IT industry. We shall see you next month. Okay, bye.